It seems like everyone in the gaming community is talking about the Game Awards this week, sharing their voter cards on social media, and practicing blood sport in comments sections, streams, and forums over which game should be taking away the big awards this year.
Dude, we got to make sure that this game wins Game of the Year, by the way.
Never
Do not let that
never.
Expedition game win Game of the Year.
Shut up!
And I've sat witness to a number of these flame wars only possible for someone who is critically in need of touching grass. And from my perch, something about this entire thing has been bugging me. Something that took me writing this script and making this video to even begin to articulate. So what is the problem with the Game Awards? And why does it matter? We're going to unpack all of that in this video. As a retro-addled, turn-based loving 80s kid, the Game Awards, and more specifically, quote, Game of the Year, for many years, was something that I spent most of my adult life paying zero attention to, failing to notice it even existed. There are more Game of the Year winners that I haven't played than ones that I have, and whether that sounds elitist, or perhaps more accurately, just highly niche of me to say, I always just imagined that those games were quote-unquote for the normies, and all the cool stuff that I really like the Trails series, was too good for the unwashed masses to ever appreciate. Temperature check, how many nominations did Trails in the Sky FC Remake get again this year?
You get dick.
I'm not bitter, but sincerely, that kind of elitism is the thinking of Nick in the past. Because something did fundamentally change for me when Baldur's Gate 3 won in 2023. I've been a turn-based loving, Baldur's Gate enjoying, D&D playing geek since the 90s. I remember clear as day when all three of these fancies were so niche, you basically had to quietly coax some of your friends in secret to try them out and get them fully hooked too. And that's exactly what I did. But flash forward 30 years, and a fully turn-based, story-rich RPG based on Dungeons & Dragon rules is mainstream and winning Game of the Year? Mainstream audiences can like turn-based? It can win the big award? It felt like a sea change, which, to be clear, I still feel to this day. I do think turn-based, and tangentially RPGs and JRPGs, are more strongly than ever breaching into the mainstream in the modern era. And it felt like attaining this level of prestige at the awards show was proof in the pudding. But then the 2024 Game Awards came along, and we had two JRPG nominees in Metaphor ReFantazio, probably my Game of the Year, and also Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But we all know what comes next. We had Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Metaphor ReFantazio, as I said, in the mix, both outstanding JRPGs in my opinion, and Metaphor was also turn-based. And then there was Black Myth Wukong, not a game I personally played, but also stood in a lot as a juggernaut. But the winner, as I'm sure you know, was Astro Bot, a game I had never even heard of until discovering it for having won Game of the Year. And I was just stunned and flabbergasted. At first, I felt like some quote-unquote random kids game snubbed a handful of masterpieces of their due. I remember Asmongold appeared to have felt the exact same way I did, and in a defiant protest, he picked up Astro Bot and streamed himself playing it. It was clear to me that he wanted to trash the game on stream, and I, who basically never watches game streams or Let's Play VODs, did tune into his YouTube VOD because I was so outraged that I just wanted to share in his schadenfreude. But what happened to Asmongold in real time was actually the same thing that happened to me in watching him play the game.
Oh my god. I get it.
Did I leave itching to play Astro Bot or dispelling my thought that it was chiefly a kid's game? Frankly, not really. I'm still all the way good, and that game is still definitely not for me. But did I leave understanding why it was there, understanding its quality, and why other people see it to be a masterpiece in the same way I saw my turn-based darlings like Baldur's Gate 3 or Metaphor? And therein lies the rub. Let's take the two most recent Game of the Years. Baldur's Gate 3 and Astro Bot. I can easily say they're both very high quality games. Baldur's Gate is better to me, but the things that make Baldur's Gate 3 high quality are almost entirely different from the parameters that I would say make Astro Bot high quality. Baldur's Gate 3 has a deep, compelling narrative where players have a ton of choices in how to approach that narrative, with every decision cascading into future consequences, topped with mechanical and combat and class building depth that's almost unparalleled in RPGs. Whereas Astro Bot just looks really damn pretty and appears to have, again I never played it, tight and responsive controls and top tier sensory feedback. This isn't even comparing apples and oranges. This is like trying to compare puppies to sports cars. Sure, the sports car costs a lot of money to make, it's a symbol of prestige, and there's some part in nearly everyone's limbic monkey brain that can go, ooh, shiny, vroom. But my limbic monkey brain is much more wired to go, oh, look at that face. Can you tell which game is the sports car and which game is the puppy in my metaphor? And this year has an even bigger conundrum to me personally. I think Expedition 33 and Blueprints, which did not get Game of the Year nomination, but has others, are both masterpieces. I thoroughly played and enjoyed both games, but if you asked me which game is better, the only way I could possibly reply is, better how? Like, yeah, Expedition 33 hit closer to home for everything I've wanted in a game for basically my whole life. But Blueprints is an entirely different experience, scratching a completely different itch when playing, and has a sort of design depth I've pretty much never seen in a game before. I think you can see where I'm going with this point. It's really hard to compare games of entirely different genres because the qualities that make them masterpieces aren't always, well, comparable. But I think the problem runs much deeper than that. Differing tastes aside, and the wildly differing nature of the different genre experiences notwithstanding, the bigger problem here is one of a more practical constraint. While the Game Awards doesn't weight the open vote as heavily as the judge vote, our vote is 10% weight for those who don't know, it's still there. But just think about that for a second. To be at least a fair enough voter to have played all 6 Game of the Year nominations, and forget every other category for a second or we make this problem even worse, you're looking at a combined box price for the 6 titles equaling $310. And let's not forget that Donkey Kong is a Switch 2 exclusive and Death Stranding is a PS5 exclusive. I own neither console personally because, well, PC Master Race, but the point I'm making is that if you want to have played all 6 of these games, you need to have something like $1,000 in consoles as well. And that's only the fiscal investment. The main scenario playthrough of all 6 games will also total you about 230 hours, according to my Google search. Roughly double that number for completionist playthroughs, by the way. And laid out like this, I would wager it's a relatively small percentage of people who played all 6 nominees, an even smaller percentage still who have beaten all 6 games, and an infinitesimal amount of people who fully completed them all, 100%. And when you lay it all out like this, I think you can see just how different video games, and by extension video game buffs like us, are from, say, movies and film buffs. You could probably argue film has the same problem of category bias. She loves rom-coms and dramas, he loves action and horror. I still don't think the difference is quite as stark as the experiences granted by Expedition 33 compared to Donkey Kong, compared to Blueprints, but sure, let's just grant that film has that same problem. What cannot be said for film is the appertaining investment and barrier to entry needed to more thoroughly engage with the medium. You can watch 6 movies in less than half the time it would take you to play the main scenario of one of these 6 games. Movie tickets average around $16 in the US, and it's cheaper if you watch it later on streaming services, and no console needed. So yeah, we are talking a much smaller barrier to entry here. And I think this barrier to entry is part of the fracture we have been witnessing. It's like completely different warring tribes who have absolutely no connection, engagement, or understanding of the games they didn't vote for because they've probably never even played them, because they don't have the time or money or even the hardware to play them. We're not in a situation where every gamer, or even a significant portion of the gamer base, can fully engage with the medium in a way that film buffs at least plausibly could. Again, you're just left with fractured tribes championing the horse they backed with no understanding or engagement of everything else that's out there. And look, I'm no exception personally. I'm rooting for Expedition 33, and wouldn't you know, it's the only damn Game of the Year nominee this year that I even played. I will say that the extent to my integrity is that I have personally abstained from voting this year because of these meditations that I'm having on this video now. I know that I fully have my biases and that I have more blind spots than not, and so instead I produced this video. Most people aren't interested, or for that matter, even have the time to play all of the nominated games in question, and it's for these reasons that, while this might be an unpopular opinion, I think having curated judges is fundamentally a good thing, at least in theory. I hope that judges at least have taken the time to more thoroughly sample the field when they cast their votes and make their decisions. Call it an elitist take, but I probably do think that this is better than just letting we, the people, run rampant with our opinions, given all the constraints that I've outlined before in this video. But I also have no doubt that no matter how good the judge, they have their biases just like we do. So are these constraints impossible to escape? I think I highlighted the problem well enough, and you might be thinking at this point, okay Nick, but why does any of this matter? People will play what they like, avoid what they don't, sales will show that, cream will rise to the top, calm the F down. And I would sort of agree to that. Sales, to be sure, means something. They clearly are a weather vane for success, quality, and impact. But I also think that we gamers, especially those of you who care enough to be watching a video like this one, understand that sales and revenue generation cannot possibly be the only metric by which to measure a game's quality. Lest we argue that mobile gaming is strictly superior to everything else, given its status as a money-printing juggernaut. We get it. Money talks, and developers will always do the things that make them money. The sky's blue, water's wet, developers follow the money. But some of us are gamers. I've been playing video games as my primary hobby since the 80s, and I've never played mobile games, and fate help me, I never will. Money is a constant. It will always be a key aspect of feedback that developers observe, but in an economy where wages are stagnant, cost of living is raising, and many games are getting more and more aggressively monetized, there are some developers out there who clearly aren't trying to bleed their customers dry. Developers who do clearly love and care about the medium as much as we do, and are trying to be fair to their customers whilst still trying to be profitable and successful. Larian Studios, Sandfall Interactive, and Team Cherry are all fine exemplars of such studios, but almost by definition, if they're purposefully being less aggressive in monetizing the masterpieces that they've created for us, there needs to be some mechanism to reward and honor those efforts that sits aside from the almighty dollar. And that, my friends, is where I think the Game Awards really comes into play, and why, at least to us gamers, they actually matter. Maximizing the bottom line is the goal of suits and investors, and on some level, everyone. But the endeavor to create a masterpiece, a work of art, something that will take risks, raise the bar, delight gamers, and transcend the medium, and be talked about decades later as a piece of formative art to the lives of those who partook in it, if money's not the best way to motivate that pursuit, then maybe prestige is. And that is what I think the Game Awards are for, and that is why I think they matter. That's all I got today, guys. I know that this was a very different video from the ones that I usually make, but the Game Awards and all the buzz surrounding them have just been building these thoughts that have been welling up inside of me, and I had to get them out there. If you stuck around for this entire video, thank you so much for listening. This is Nick BRPG. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving it a like. If you really like RPG content especially, please also consider giving me a sub. I'm a tiny YouTuber, and all of the support means the world to me. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one.